Okay, I'll call to order our council workshop, discussion on our rules and procedures. This is going to be very informal. As you all know, I gathered up all I could of various copies, various iterations of these things, and from what I can tell, in February, as these minutes show, the consider and approve the council rules was on the agenda, the consent agenda. It was pulled off, and then a motion was made to remove wording from section 4, stating that public comment will be allowed at all town council regular meetings, special meetings, and workshops, except as noted in section 12B3. And that was passed. So, and that had been our intention. I do know that. It was a minor change, but it was there. But what happened was, I believe Councilor Marone was kind enough to do this, he prepared the redlined version. And I didn't realize until when you open that up, if you put your cursor on anything red, it tells you who put it there. So what I noticed was, and it pretty much matched the one that is dated the 28th or something, which just shows the lines drawn through and other language written in. So with the exception of one other, which we'll bring up, this redlined version, to my understanding, is the closest one to an acceptable version that we approved, except it looked like he added more words. So technically, those weren't approved. You know what I mean? So if we're looking at that section, it's going to be, where the hell did it go? Oh God, I got to stop doing that. Ooh.
You got 2 years, you're good.
Haven't got an F yet. Okay, where's the, I just read it. Hold on. You guys could help me. There it is, it's section 4. Oh, it's right on the front page, Vinny. The red line version, you could see it, it's a little, the copy I sent you now, it's just a little shaded and faded. So what happened was the one that was changed had, right where it says public question, follow me, public comment may exceed 20 minutes at the discretion of the chair. There was the line that we voted to remove, and it's crossed out. Okay, you still with me? It's not in the red line version. It's in the other version that had handwriting. So that was removed, but then the rest of it that Joe wrote in red was added. So that's the only confusion I had. I don't think we approved that language. We approved removing the line, but we didn't approve, unless someone remembers a meeting I missed. So it's not a big deal. It's in the red line version. So technically, the approved council rules are the rules that have that one line removed, but not this stuff in red added, neither of which is on the town website. Town website is the old one we changed. That's coming down. So my understanding is if we want to stick with this, all we have to do is make a motion at the next meeting to approve them the way they're written in this red-lined version. Unless we want to make any other changes, that can be discussed in a moment.
Vinny, so that's the February 27th, 2024 version?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Well, no. The 2024, the February version that was in the minutes. See, that had the lines in it. That's it.
The copy I have has all the red lines. The red the stricken out part is gone.
Right.
It's dated at the bottom, February 27th. It's an actual, was originally a Word document. It has the red line that you have in there, just in there properly.
Right.
And mine is dated whenever it was actually typed in, which was a few days before. It looked like on the 22nd or something. So nothing changed versus the other version that you emailed us that was dated 5/28/25. Town Council Rules of Procedure. That looks like an older version of an earlier draft that was intended to show the strikeout. I don't think we were sent versions that removed the red line after acceptance.
Right.
But so I think I think we're all working off basically the same thing, but it can be cleaned up and it
Yeah.
should be on the website. We should have a hard copy. There shouldn't be any confusion about where we are.
Well, when we leave here, I'm going to see that we have everything we want, and I'll have it retyped, and completely retyped, because there's, you know, there's a few other little glitches here and there. But anyway,
So the question is, do people want to continue with the workshop language that was removed 10 years ago? I was against removing it. It finally made its way back in. I think it's good the way it is, and it allows for the exception for the chairman to address or acknowledge a member of the public if it's necessary, important, or whatever. In Councilor Marone's case, he preferred the public conversation, so he allowed or engaged with them at his will. That was his choice. But I think as it's, I support how it's worded now.
And when you say that, you're referring to this red text on section 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, if you look at the ones that are online right now, that's the one right here, and compare it to the red line, you'll see where the changes were made. I guess what I wasn't sure about, but you can answer, is when we voted in February to approve removing that line, when we approved it, removing that line, was the copy before us, did it also have that extra paragraph that Joe added in red?
Yes,
Oh, it did have it?
did have it.
So
That's what I have in front of me here.
All right, so technically, the red-lined version
Was accepted.
was accepted, it just needs to be fixed up.
It was never cleaned up into a final
And
version
put
that
online.
removed the tracking changes.
All right, so right now, there we go. The only other thing I wanted to ask is, remember I shared one that had a whole bunch of scribbles in the, whose was that? Was that anybody's work? It was attached to the agenda, February 27th agenda, and it had all sorts of writing. That could have been Janice writing that stuff in, or it could have been one of us.
Which one is this?
It was attached to the agenda. See, it's just got all, I don't even know what it's called.
Oh.
See, it was what was attached to the agenda. Yeah. So, because it says 3E on it, this was what was attached when we were, for that meeting. It was the one with all the writing on it. It wasn't the red line one. In other words, it was this one. This is what was attached to the agenda.
So the first copy, the first few pages, is the updated version that includes in black and white the strikeout and the red line.
See Laughlin's edits?
Yeah,
That's before, right?
and later on, it says Laughlin's edits because that was the original. So the last few pages of that attachment are our original rules.
Got it.
And the first few are what we ended up being. The Laughlin edits comment
Got it.
is inserting the language that I was just speaking
That
so
stuff-
highly of.
That
Yeah.
stuff has all been incorporated
Right.
somehow or another. So we can legitimately believe that the red-lined copy is the set that was approved in February. Correct?
Correct.
All right, throw the rest away. And here they are. So this is a workshop to see if anybody wants to make any other changes, add anything, do anything, at your own peril. You did say something you liked.
I do would, cool. I lost my words. So I was just going through.
Yeah.
So I don't, when we're setting rules for the council, while I understand that the occasional exception can be made by the chair is still following council rules. And not that I don't trust you or whatever. The reality is, though, that when I walk into a workshop, I expect to know if I'm going to have public comment after every agenda item or if I'm not. So I would prefer to strike in a workshop format. If we are calling something a workshop, workshops are designed to be for the council. If we have something that is particularly pressing, that somebody is jumping out of their pants in order to be able to speak, and this is something that maybe they've contacted the chair or the council in advance to say, I can't attend these other meetings and I really would like to be heard, or can you read this into the record? Fine. But I would like that to be on an exception basis, not turn up and act in such a way that you believe that you are the 10th counselor participating in our workshops. It is not to say that I believe that we should mute the public, but I also believe that the council should be able to collaborate together, similar to how the Board of Ed collaborates on their budget workshops, where there isn't public comment. They go line by line, department by department, and anybody who has questions has the department representative in front of them to represent and explain anything that we have. What has happened in my term on the council and back on the board watching council, because I had nothing better to do, is basically these workshops, especially during COVID, turned into a bit of a free-for-all. And we had the same people kind of presenting their ideas repeatedly off topic. And we don't have a means to stop those comments from happening. We also have had the issues last year where, through no fault of anybody's, we were meeting with departments and members of the public showed up to make comments on things that were completely not on the agenda. And this wasn't at any fault of their own, but maybe perhaps because we had all the departments listed and they didn't know what they were going to be making a comment on. But, obviously we had a lot of extra commentary last year due to the tax increase and all of that. But I would say that I would like to use workshops, if we call them workshops, to actually workshop, where we, like we are doing now, and in the absence of nobody wanting to be here at almost 9 o'clock at night, are able to speak to each other with some, while we are recognized a relaxed decorum, and also able to, give our opinions on, or freely ask our questions to the departments and to each other regarding what items we may consider taking off if we don't agree entirely with the mayor's budget. What items, what items do we find to be extremely important? What items, and tracking these things. But I don't see that having the derailment between each department of public comment that sometimes goes off rails, or that sometimes goes off topic, is effective. And it hasn't been effective in any of the 2 terms, 4 years that I've done this so far, nor the 2 years before that. In fact, that COVID times was quite an S show, if we have to say it. So watch the meetings, they're very entertaining. But that was kind of where this started from what I saw. And I want to be able to work together to come up with something in advance of the motion meetings. I don't think that we should be walking into the motion meetings with 3 separate plans that nobody knows anything about whose ideas are what. I think that we should be collaborating with each other. And this is not to say that anybody can't suggest their own motions or whatever. Obviously, we're all free agents. But we can also say that we've never worked completely together. We ask like random questions, and then we kind of like look at each other with the departments, and we're not really reviewing things. We don't talk to each other about what is going on with with these departments. And then we all turn up on motions night and we surprise each other with our great ideas. So I personally would love to work with everybody here on making that a practice of years gone by. And I do think that workshops should be turned back to the council, unless, of course, there is some pressing issue. I have trouble with the language that it's all at the department's discretion, or the chairman's discretion, because basically, if next year the chairman decides we're gonna do comments in every workshop, then it essentially means this is not an effective practice. So it becomes less effective. So, I mean, I don't know how everyone feels about the idea. I know that there can be backlash as far, and I fully acknowledge that it sometimes seems, when we say we don't want public comment, it sometimes will appear to people that we don't want to hear from them. And it's not the case, at least from the point that I'm trying to get across is, when I do work at work, I don't have people stopping by my desk to tell me a story about what they did over the weekend. Figure out how we can battle the competing priority of budget versus all of our wants and needs. So that's really all I have to say. I don't know that it necessarily has to be a motion, because this is a workshop, so I don't think it can be. But I would love to know what other people think about the idea. And again, if we need a meeting on a special night, feel free to call it a special meeting. And then Robert's Rules takes over, and public comment can be whatever you want it to be. I just think that if we're gonna call workshops, especially budget workshops, we should actually work together and do the workshop. That's it.
It's fine, I'm going to answer. So you were talking about two different things, basically. Primarily the budget workshops to make your point, but you also were looking to eliminate the statement about the chair having some discretion in any workshop format, not just budget workshops. So which is understandable. So we got to talk about those two things. I don't, when this started changing, I was not on board with public comment at workshops. I got a lot of heat for it, but I said, we have a hard enough time doing our jobs, and that's a bad way of putting it. We have a hard enough time having the kind of discussions we need to have sometimes when the nights are going on forever. We need to be able to confer with one another, to do like businesses do, brainstorm, call it what you wish. A workshop, to me, has always been the council's only opportunity to brainstorm among themselves, period. You can't take any action. You can't do anything. You just work among yourselves. And then, if it leads to an action, it has to come up on a regular meeting, where then it's open to the public for comment. Now, I have heard the argument that, yeah, but if we can't give you our opinion while you're workshopping it, by the time it gets to a meeting, you've already made your mind up. So what I say isn't going to matter. Honestly, that's not true. I don't know many counselors who aren't going to these things and say, all right, that's a good point. They make amendments. They change their mind. It may appear that way, but that's not how it goes. So anyway, I've always wanted workshops to be our own. So really, we got as close to that as possible with the latest language, but that still had in that caveat But, you know, the chair has the discretion to allow for it. I understand the concern about that, because that can just become an everyday thing anyway. So that's really the hot topic here. I will tell you, budget workshops, those are for the council. They always have been, and they're supposed to be for the council. There's a public hearing for the public to ask questions of the departments. Then there are our workshops where we get to ask questions of the departments. And I know there's some folks in the public that say, well, you know, if we were able to jump in, we could help you out there. That just maybe argues for when the public hearing is held. I have to make that decision at some point. I want budget workshops to be for the council. I want the public hearing to be for the public. We can't even talk at that. That's for the public. Every department has to be here for that. And then when we get to the meetings where we will start making motions to make changes and adjustments, those are all open to public comment because motions are made. That's how I feel. I'm in agreement to a large extent with Councilor Allenson that I think workshops should not have public comment. So I've said it. So who's next?
So I just wanted to say for Board of Education, at least in this past term, when we had our budget workshops, we purposely didn't have them here. We had them at the Board of Education central office because it was more intimate. And we did allow for public comment, not question and answer, public comment only in the beginning. And then it was a venue for us, as Board of Ed colleagues to ask questions of the departments, to do all that. A lot of times what happened in the public comment, it would be like a representative of the teachers union, a representative of the paras union, and maybe a couple of parents that would just make overall comments around what they thought was necessary for the school system and if cuts needed to be made where they thought they should not come from. That was really what the conversation was. It was not a question and answer. It was just like this initial comment, more information for the board to take into account, and then it was a conversation among ourselves. That did tend to be useful because you at least had additional points of view to take into account, and it may trigger you to ask a different question of a particular department. But that's the way we did it, at least in the past 2 years.
No matter what, it's a public meeting, right? So people could come and listen, I would assume. So that's that. I think you have to do that legally. In planning and zoning, I actually found, public input at workshops, especially because the experts showed up, developers, constituents within the planning and zoning group. Wallingford Works for Housing, when we came out with the, kind of affordable rezoning, that there was huge value to having people who understood those things. Now, we on the budget side, we kind of own it, should know it, get into the details of it, and probably should be talking with, with finance. But maybe a suggestion on this, leave discretion at the chair, and say, if public comment at a workshop is allowed, it should be reserved either to the beginning or the end and then concluded. Meaning it's not a fully participatory, workshop, but allows for a, lead-in or post period that, someone could maybe come in from a teachers union and say, hey, this is why this is important or whatever. So I think, that's what I would do.
And Councilor Varda, hear your point, which I think is why ultimately I'm in favor of including some sort of discretion of the chair. But you're talking about participants, like in the process or in the item. versus what we're talking about is people that don't have an actual official role or capacity.
Yeah, and I'm not,
Yeah.
necessarily in favor of that.
Yeah, and so I think ultimately, as is the budget concerns that Councilor Allenson brought up, all of it comes down to execution on what we choose to do, whether we choose to be participatory or collaborative, or whether we choose to keep our cards to ourselves until game night and toss them on the table. It sounds like Chairman Testa is going to keep it close to the chest on whether he allows the public comment or not allow it often. If we want to add something but maybe allowed as a special exception at the discretion of the chair, if you want to heighten the exclusivity of it, we can do something like that. Technically, should not be allowed to speak. And I prefer, I'm very Robert's Rules, very rule-oriented it's black and white. It literally is black and white. And if we exclude all, then we exclude all. And that is kind of where we have gotten to, where these public comments during our meetings, they cannot ask questions of the other counselors. They can direct questions to the chair and all this other stuff. And that took decades to evolve to, and anybody that paid attention over the last couple of years, that has become very valuable. And that's a rule. That's a hard rule. So I'm okay with adding the as a special exception if that makes people feel more comfortable. But I'm also going to have to defer to how it's actually implemented, and that's up to the chairman. We always have the recourse of appealing the decision of the chair. So if he granted somebody the right to speak, a member of the public that was not a participant in the discussion, a counselor could speak up and move to appeal the decision of the chair, and if 2/3 vote, then overridden. So that's always an option as well.
The mutiny provision.
I've invited it when I got called out once. Yeah, twice actually, and I was fine.
Yes. I'm just reading the language. And
Mike.
hello, Mike. I'm reading the language. I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry. I keep reading it, trying to think of how to word this, but anyone else can speak. Go. Yes, Autumn?
So the only thing I wanted to do was kind of address two of the comments. I think that the only difference I see with, workshops from our boards and then also with our Board of Ed, I did forget in my first term on the council, Board of Ed added public comment. But my understanding was you had to fill out a form, and no. Oh, okay. So I think the only other argument I would make, and I don't need somebody to write the word special in an exception in order to give the chairman an exception. If you want to leave the words exception in, I mean, every meeting was conducted as an exception last year, though. So that's why I am a little bit hesitant if we're going to adopt these ideas. But I certainly don't care. I'm not that bought into it, and I survived last time. I just think that it won't be as a collaborative of an experience. And on the other boards, I would say there is no public comment where it's literally all public comment. And then, as for, the public or whoever cares, I did send out a very long email also kind of giving ideas about the budget process. And one of my thoughts was in between public hearing and motions meeting, we go back and we discuss anything that came up in public comment to, or in the public hearing to address concerns that might have come up or anything else. I think that sometimes the public may be concerned about things, and then when we start asking our questions, it kind of assuages that concern in the meetings. But I certainly, but like I said, I mean, like, it would be my preference, but I'm going to survive either way, so, yeah.
Councilor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think if the chair has expressed his philosophy, if you will, on comment, and if the rules as they are written right now are at the discretion of the chair, then we could probably rest comfortably on knowing what the chair's philosophy is. So adding a word wouldn't necessarily be required, because it sounds like the word was probably already somewhat present in the chair's mind, which would be like the exception to the rule or what have you. I also agree, having gone through a single term and 2 budgets, that the workshop could be used in a different way that would be more productive for us, perhaps as a way to share our ideas a little sooner, ways to collaborate perhaps, or perhaps people prefer to keep it close to the vest until the night of. That's your prerogative as well. So I think those are good things. But I understand why there was a push to have there be comment in just about every aspect, and that was sort of a prevailing feeling that oftentimes the town government, and again, I don't want to, but wasn't being responsive, or perhaps was not getting everybody's opinion fairly or what have you, and I'm not qualifying any of those statements. I think for transparency, if we allow it, so that if it is a topic that the chair wishes to allow comment on, then I think that it's a fail-safe mechanism that isn't terrible. And to Councilor Laffin's point, if one of us or 2/3 of us don't like the idea of that, we can just simply appeal it and change it. So what I'm saying in a really long way is, I'm not sure if we really need to make any changes to the rules. Now that we found the right ones, and we can take out the mismatched coloring of the fonts and take away the little sidebars that indicate where the edits were, I think we're okay, unless there's a blind spot or something, or an area that somebody else wants to address.
Sounds fine to me.
There is, the one thing that, there's a difference between allowing public comment and allowing public comment on every individual agenda item. So that's where we get hooked. For example, I've always believed that public comment questions are warranted and probably required on an agenda, an item that has been moved, an action item. But when we're having a discussion on the agenda, that should not be open to public comment, just like a workshop, excuse me. So, in effect, a discussion agenda item is a mini workshop, if you adhere to that philosophy. But that's somewhere where, that's item by item. Discretion has to be shown, which, can be. But the other one is, the way this language is written, I looked at it, it could really be interpreted this way, because it just says public comment is not mandatory. It doesn't say at all parts of a workshop, during parts of the workshop. So in effect, the discretion that's given as written here almost sounds like we're going to have a workshop, and on this particular one, I'm going to allow public comment because of the subject matter. But on this one, we're not. Or take for granted we're not, unless we say we are. That's one way this can be interpreted. And I like that, because that says, I like the idea of saying, You know, like everybody talked in the beginning, you almost now made a workshop a regular meeting with a public question and answer period, in which you could say we should do. Give everyone, 10 minutes to say what they have to say. You bring that up at another time. We can think about that one, because we could change these anytime. As we go into the budget workshops, I'm telling you, I want them to be our workshops. So I like the way this is written. I just keep getting stuck with this. Public comment is not mandatory, but may be allowed at this. So,
Are you talking about for the workshop language?
yeah, that last paragraph in the light red. The town may meet in a workshop format where action can only be referred back to a regular or special meeting of council for a vote, and
You can
you
change
could say in which there is no public comment.
unless otherwise allowed by the chair, or you want to.
Right, well, I'm just saying, just a different way of saying, and public comment is not mandatory.
Yep, and then were you talking about, so back in the day, as you inferred or referenced, there were different, agendas were worded very carefully for very specific reasons. Discussion on meant no public comment.
Right.
Discussion and possible action. If it said possible action, that meant the public can comment. If it said report on, the public could not comment. And we could not act. If it doesn't say possible action, we could not act.
Right.
So there was a very careful construction, and over the years, in the last 10 years, that got dismantled to just councilors 10 through 15 joining in. I'm for going back to that too, but that's,
Read the first line of section 4, along with me, children. With the exception of the consent agenda, public input on individual agenda items will be received during it, blah, 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 blah. That can very easily be made on individual agenda items, in other words, on action items. And that addresses everything you just said. On all agenda items,
no, this says all items.
I'm just saying, public input on all, we could say, public, yes, on all, yeah, I don't want, on which there is a motion made, you can just say actionable, right?
All items indicated for action.
And then does action have to be defined later in the
I'm just,
definitions?
hold on. Any agenda items that will be voted upon by the council,
There you go.
right?
Yep.
So let's just go with that for a minute, because that's gonna bring down the wrath. Hold on. Individual input on, public input, wait, on all, what did I say?
With the exception of the consent
Wait,
agenda, public input on individual items that the council will
Right,
vote
on
on.
all agenda items, the council will be voting on, right?
Yep.
Will be voting on.
Or may vote on, because we may not vote.
Well,
It may say possible
well, that's
action, we
true.
may not vote.
May vote on, may be voting on. Right? Dot, dot, dot.
Can we add some language in there that just basically makes it known that the intent of this is so we're able to collaborate and have working sessions versus this is a way to limit public input?
Right.
Well, this is a rule, though. It doesn't have to explain it. Like,
But I see
the
what you're
chair
saying.
should be explaining that.
We could just say, the council will hold, at times hold workshop meetings, comma, which are intended to blah, 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 comma. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, explain what we call a workshop.
If you guys feel better and you'll do it, it's fine,
Yeah.
I don't care. It's extra words that don't actually have to do with the rule, but it's fine. I mean, in Meriden, the public gets 20 minutes a month. at a designated meeting, and they're not allowed to speak
Be voting on.
at
will
every
be-
meeting, let alone every issue.
Will be received during discussion of the specific
And the
item.
people they get.
After all members of the council have had an opportunity to review and discuss the item. That goes on and on. Boom. That states that I would just say will be allowed. Or should I keep received? Keep received. I like this. What that does is that now says, unless there's an action item, unless it's an agenda item, it's not going to be open for public comment. It's going to be a discussion item alone. A miniature workshop, if you will. Workshops themselves will be run the same way. But again, there'll be some discretion, right? Prior to the workshop, like setting up the workshop. I'm telling you right now, that's how I'm going to interpret that. I'm going to interpret that as making it clear when establishing the workshop whether public comment is going to be welcome or not.
So do you have that final language now, or you want to
No, that's just,
wordsmith
no,
that
I don't,
in
I
the back
think
when
it's just, that's how I'm interpreting it,
Okay.
right? Oh, well, some people could say it could be on anything. I don't know. I mean, this is enough that we could just sort of chew on these few little paragraphs, and I know there's a lot of brilliant people here. If you come up with another little way, a better way of wording it, without changing the intent, I'm open, right? And otherwise, I'll have it, I'll figure it out, and then we'll get it typed up nicely, and we'll take it up at the next meeting. Everybody cool with that? Were there any other rules you wanted to change?
So the draft will be voted on at the council meeting, though, correct?
What's that now?
The draft will be voted
Oh, yeah.
at the council meeting.
Oh, no, oh, yeah, nothing's in, right now, the one we're playing with is actually the actual one.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, these few minor changes will be run by everybody, and again, we take it up and talk about it. I think in general, everything's pretty good. Anything else? All right, thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. This special workshop is adjourned.